you send out a new policy, you get no emails back, you think, okay, must be fine. Well, the crews could be chewing on this thing and just not liking it at all. I don't know that because no one sent me an email and I haven't bothered to go down and take a pulse. So I really need to get down there and do an assessment of what's happening at the hull.
Stay tuned. Coming up is our interview with Jeff Snider talking about the NIOSH 5, or the 5 most often cited contributing factors in line of duty death investigations, and then connecting that to leadership. Hello and welcome to the Situational Awareness Matters Show, episode 403. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to prevent bad outcomes. Today's feature segment is sponsored by Gasaway Virtual Training. There are 33 online training programs there for you to choose from. Some of the programs are live events presented virtually, and some of the programs are pre-recorded programs. To learn more, visit the samatters.com website and click on the Virtual Training tab. Okay, let's jump into our feature segment, our interview with Jeff Snider, talking about the NIOSH 5, or the 5 most often cited contributing factors to line of duty death investigations and connecting it to leadership lessons. Jeff Snider has served with the Canadian military as a Special Forces operator, a correctional officer at a maximum security facility, and a 28-year veteran of the fire service, including positions of firefighter, lieutenant, captain, K9 handler, acting training officer, and assistant chief in both the Vancouver Fire and Rescue Services and the Abbotsford Fire and Rescue Service. Jeff has been involved as an instructor in the fire service since 1997. Outside of the departments that he has worked for as a firefighter, he has been fortunate enough to travel all over BC, across Canada, and as far as Mexico and Peru in his role as an instructor and evaluator. Jeff's role now as the chief instructor for Practical and Tactical Training Group allows him to work with like-minded, dedicated instructors who understand that teaching is an outstanding opportunity to pour back into the community that which has been provided to them. He sees this as both a privilege and a pleasure. When Jeff is not at work, he is spending time with his much better half, his dogs, his family, and friends. Exercising brain and body is a priority, so he will often be found lifting something, rolling with his jiu-jitsu buddies, or reading something. Otherwise, you may find him hiking in the woods, building unusual playhouses for his grandchildren, or carving things with a chainsaw. Interesting. So as a refresher, the NIOSH 5, or the top 5 contributing factors in firefighter line of duty death reports, are improper risk assessment, lack of incident command, lack of accountability, inadequate communications, and lack of standard operating procedures, or failure to follow the established standard operating procedures. These are the top 5 causal factors that contribute to the ultimate outcomes in the investigated line of duty death reports. And while we're on the topic, Jeff wants to let us know that personally, that he has read nearly every NIOSH line of duty death report. And he cites this as an invaluable resource made available to him. When tragedy strikes our fire service family, Jeff believes it's imperative that we don't lose the lessons that others have paid with the highest price possible, their lives. Hey everyone, Rich Gasaway here, host of the Situational Awareness Matters show. Today, for my guest, I have Jeff Snider. Jeff is a retired assistant chief, and he runs his own training company called Practical and Tactical Training Group. And he's done that for about 5 years since he retired from the fire service. His training group works with organizations on leadership, strategy and tactics, emergency scene management, vehicle rescue, and rapid intervention. And I'll put in the show notes the link to his website. It's practical and the letter N, just short for and, practical and tactical.net. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hi, Rich. Thanks for having me on. It's a privilege.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Tell me a little bit about your background in the fire service, how you got started, places you've worked, positions you've held, things about the organizations you've worked in, so that our listeners and viewers can kind of get a sense as to who is this guy.
Right on. Initially, I started in Vancouver City on the west coast of British Columbia. Probably about 2-point-something million people for population, about 19 fire halls. Grew up there as a kid in East Vancouver, and I figured I was going to be police, military, or fire. I started in the military with the SF for a while, and then got out, went to the prison system for a couple of years as a correctional officer, and then was going through the application process for the fire service. I was fortunate enough to get hired in Vancouver, 22 years there as a firefighter, lieutenant, captain, training officer. And then I got a job offer in a municipality about an hour east of Vancouver as an assistant chief of training and operations. So I moved out there in 2016 and worked there for just over 5 years with a smaller group of firefighters, about 4 halls, now 5 halls, and paid on call combination, which was a great experience for me because in Vancouver, we didn't have that paid on call experience. So it was an eye opener, and also a lot less firefighters doing a lot of work. So that was another learning curve for me. And it was good overall for my career. Absolutely.
And the second organization was where?
Abbotsford Fire Department. Yeah.
Abbotsford.
Yeah.
Okay. And geographically, is that, you said it's an hour east of Vancouver. Is there any other landmarks for folks that might not be that familiar with the geography? You know,
if you were to come straight up from Seattle and deflect just a little to your right, it's right across the border from Sumas in Washington State.
Okay. All right. And we were talking before we hit the recording that I had been in Abbotsford to do a program for the Fire Chiefs Association of British Columbia, but it was before you were there. You were still in Vancouver.
That's right. Yeah.
And then how long did you spend in Abbotsford? Did you say 5 years or
about 5.5 years? Yeah, not quite 6. Then retired out of there a couple of years back.
Okay. And what part of the country do you live in now?
I live in the west coast of British Columbia. I'm in Mission, which is actually just north of Abbotsford. Small kind of bedroom community, got property. I have search dogs that I work with. One's a cadaver, one's live search. That was part of my experience in Vancouver. It involved our heavy urban search and rescue team. And I was fortunate enough to get involved in the canine side. So now I've got property that I can run the dogs on. I've got my own agility area. It's good. It's nice out there. But my Wi-Fi is horrible. So I'm at my friend's house today doing the Wi-Fi because that's the price you pay to live out in the rural areas.
Yeah, right on. Tell us a little bit about your training company. When did you start it, why you started it, and what you do and where you do it and that kind of stuff.
So I started the company because when I roll back, I was on the job maybe about 4 years, and a senior member said, you should come and assist me with some instruction. I started working with them. I realized how much I enjoyed it, how much I learned from it. And so I started teaching within the job, and then for the fire academy that was in our area here, the Justice Institute, some smaller companies at the time. And I'd been doing that for about 20 years and finally got to a point where I thought, I want to do my own thing where I can focus on the things that I really enjoy. So about 5 years ago, I started the company up, and it's myself and a couple of friends and coworkers that go train pretty much across British Columbia. We just got back from Kitimat about 2-3 weeks ago, which is way up north, and Camino, which is the power plant that's adjacent. It was amazing, super secluded, out to a camp, working for a couple of weeks with their combination fire team, and we're heading back up pretty soon too. So it's provided me a lot of opportunity to travel and meet like-minded people and train with good folks all around British Columbia and Canada, and we even did a couple of trips down to Mexico. Did some training down there with them.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice outreach. I was just in Canada last week, so
Oh, right on.
Yeah, as you're coming, I'm going. As I'm coming, you're going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was, but I was in Alberta.
Okay.
Yeah, in the neighboring province.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about something that is identified as the NIOSH 5. But before we talk about that, why don't you talk a little bit about what NIOSH is and what they do?
So NIOSH, and I know we talked about this a little bit earlier. You probably have a more thorough understanding of it than I do, but the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, and they do investigations. One of the main things they do is investigations into line of duty deaths for firefighters. The benefit to us is there's a number of benefits, but one of the main benefits is that it identifies causal factors that keep repeating themselves, that come up a lot in these reports. I always say when I'm teaching fire officers, if you can avoid those 5 things while you're running an emergency scene, you are away to the races. I mean, those 5 primary things are constantly popping up, and as soon as you hear them, you go, yeah, I've been on a scene where that's happened. Oh, I've been guilty of that thing, missing that piece. So it's really a beneficial thing for us. And I was introduced to it by Chief Anthony Castros at FDIC, and I realized I didn't know what it was. I investigated down into it and realized what a resource we have there. And just on the line of duty deaths, as an aside, I'm preaching all the time, if we're not reviewing these things, we're doing a real disservice to those people that paid that ultimate sacrifice. That stuff is there for us. It's condensed by NIOSH and people like yourself that investigate this and put it together in digestible packages for us. If we're not looking at that, it's just unbelievable. It's like a cheat sheet, and it as much as you can get into the minutia, because as you know, these reports can go 60 to 120 pages. They put a summary. There's a summary where it tells you this is the things you need to know from this 75 pages. Here's 2 pages of drill down on this, and this will make you better today than you were yesterday. It's so good. Yeah.
And why is it called NIOSH 5? What's the 5?
Because
what's the reason are they like the most frequently occurring, or what?
Correct. They are the 5 leading causal factors that show up on these reports over and over. So when you see in the summary, it'll give you a list of the factors that were involved in why this went the way it went. And constantly these 5 keep popping up. As you read these, you go, yep, there it is again. There's number 1, there's number 3, there's number 4. They just keep coming up and up and up. It's once you see it and you realize it, you go, oh, man, this is, we should all be talking about this. We should all be thinking about this. As soon as we pull out that command board, this should be in the back of our head.
In September, I had the opportunity to meet with the NIOSH investigation team at their offices in Morgantown, West Virginia. They had invited me in to talk to the team about situational awareness and high-risk decision-making. One of the things that they said is they hear occasionally, or maybe a little more than occasionally, of the criticism of the NIOSH reports is all the reports say the same thing. And, you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt, because they say the same thing because it's always the same thing. That it's hard to invent a new cause if the cause is what the cause is. And if you're getting annoyed because you keep reading the same thing, it's because it's the same thing that is the cause. And one of the things that I'm doing with them is that the NIOSH 5, all of them have an extremely strong connection to situational awareness. And we're working on incorporating situational awareness lessons into the NIOSH report so that we can give them another perspective of looking at those NIOSH 5 and then some practical, actionable steps that they can take to improve SA. And the hope is to break the chain and reduce the frequency of occurrence of the NIOSH 5. So before we go any deeper, what are the 5 that are the NIOSH 5?
Just on what you said earlier, funny thing popped in my head was if all your ex-girlfriends have the same complaint about you, you should probably self-investigate. Like, I don't know what it is with these girls. Yeah, it's you, bud. It's you. So the 5: improper risk assessment, lack of incident command, lack of accountability, lack or failure to follow established SOPs or policies and guidelines, and inadequate communications. Those are the top 5 that these people see all the time in the summaries.
Yes, we do. Holy cow, we do. And you, at least for today, want to make a connection between those 5 causal factors and leadership. So your perspective on this is there's some leadership lessons and potential for leaders to learn from and maybe make either personal or organizational changes to try to break the chain of these NIOSH 5. So what's the connection between these line of duty death causal factors and leadership?
So interestingly enough, when I first started this concept, I thought, as much as I appreciate the NIOSH 5 and what it helps me as a fire officer, as an instructor, as a firefighter, I thought, I'm going to try to find the leadership 5. There's got to be something similar that we see in leadership that fails consistently, that we can do better. So I started to build this out. I came up with my list, bounced it off a few people, including Chief Gastros, and he said, these are really similar to the NIOSH 5. This is not a big shift from this lane to that lane. He says, there may be an opportunity here to tie these together. So I went back in, I started doing the comparisons, and I went, yeah, you know what? He's right. We're very similar in my line of 5 and his, and not the NIOSH 5 that was there. So once I started to bridge that gap between the two, I realized, yeah, this is really an opportunity for us to develop our leadership using the same tools as we use when we're in command, tactically, strategically, objectively at a fire or emergency scene. That's how that came about.
That's kind of an interesting perspective, connecting those two. It's like causal factors for leadership issues aligned to causal factors for line of duty death. Let's take each of those 5 and break them down and see how each of them apply to leadership. So I'll just give you one, and then we'll talk about that, and we'll just go on to the next, and then the next until we get through the list of 5.
Sure.
Let's start with issues of communications. Those always seem to be prevalent in the line of duty death investigation reports, and I would say, although I'll let you say it, seems to be a big problem in leadership as well. So connect the inadequate communications lesson here.
Yes, sir, you're bang on. In fact, I like to lead with this one as well, because it's the thing that ties into every problem you seem to have leadership-wise. Communication is that thread that runs through almost everything. The first piece of communication, this is a part we sometimes forget as leaders, is to listen. Before you think about talking, you really need to take in information. You got to listen with your ears and with your eyes. When you're listening to communication, you want to listen to what's being said, what's also not being said. You want to work on body language reading. You really want to collect all that information. Find the facts before you start, going forward. Jocko Willink, I'm sure you've read some of his stuff. He has a great thing. He says, when you're not talking, you're learning twice as much as the other guy, because you know everything you know, and you're learning all the things that he knows. So initially, listen. Second thing, is your messaging. When you do start to communicate, you got to be thinking about how you message, who you're messaging to, where it's landing. And this covers command stuff. This is dealing with the public. This is one-on-one communication, report writing, the email skills, social media savvy. I'm sure you've seen lots of examples of that. Lots of people have got themselves in a pinch, unfortunately, with social media, knowing what to say, when to say it, and quite often how not to get on social media at all, to avoid that potential pitfall. Commandability, that's radio communication. That's making sure that when you communicate, it's clear, concise, and communicative. Like, we don't have conversations on the radio. We communicate, get the message across, and get off that radio. Again, let me just back up. Sorry, I just wanted to make one point. A lot of stuff that I may be talking about today, this isn't my imagination that I've come up with this stuff. I didn't just develop this on my own. This has been in the works since the beginning of the fire service, but I've read stuff. I listen to people like yourself on podcasts and at FDIC, and I glean what I can from that. I'm watching video. I'm reading books. I'm self-evaluating my own leadership stuff. So some of the stuff may sound familiar to people, because I didn't invent it. I just try to put it into digestible packages for people that are busy lives, got a lot going on. If I can put it in a package where someone can get it in 20 minutes versus 4 hours of research online, that's what I'm trying to do. So I just want to be clear. I'm not taking credit for everything I say in here as my own quote or whatever that may be. So, so on the commandability, we're talking about radio communication. Once again, this came from one of the guys at FDIC. You use that radio time like your airtime in an SCBA. You're not on there rambling away. You're not, it's think, press, talk. If my communication starts with an before I start to say the line, I forgot about the think before I did the press part. So I want to be effective when I'm doing that on a command scene. Public speaking is a big piece. As an officer, not just an instructor, but as an officer, you have to be able to talk to the public. You have to be able to talk to your crews. You have to be able to talk to the bosses up top effectively. That's one of those things you just got to do by sets and reps. One-on-ones with the guys and gals that are working with you. This one's pretty tricky too, as we transition have transitioned from the old school, a bunch of type A guys hanging around the fire hall, to the diversity in the fire hall that we have now. You have to be thinking about who you're talking to and what's the way that they best hear your message. You're not tailoring it to make sure that you're meeting some sort of PC woke thing. That's not what I'm saying. It's understanding your people and communicating to them in the most effective way so they can hear you. And that may be by age, that may be by gender, that may be just by the way they grew up, and the only way you know that is by knowing your people. So that's part of this whole communication piece. Email skills. This one, if you're an officer and you can't write an email, you need to go find somebody who can help you out with that. It's not acceptable that a captain sends an email out and it's full of punctuation and spelling errors, or there's it's not capitalized or things like that. Say you're a professional. So communicate like a professional. Someone should read that email. It should look like a business email that's, in a business binder. That's how it should come across. When I send those emails, who needs to know this? I think that every time I send an email, because, there's always that person that falls out of the loop and they're like, well, how come you didn't send it to me? Well, because I didn't think, who needs to know this when I sent this email out? Example, I send something to one of my assistant chiefs because we're doing a program next week. And the chief misses the whole program, doesn't pop in for a visit. And he says, guys, I didn't know you guys were doing that down at training on Thursday. Oh, well, I got the people that were directly involved in the email, but I didn't even let the chief know that, well, there's another gap in the communication loop. It was caused by me. So there's all these pieces that come into play on the communication part. And no unnecessary messaging. I don't send out a bunch of CCs to a bunch of people they don't need to know. I get enough emails as it is. If someone actually went and used the process and said, does Jeff need to know this? Maybe it's no. Don't send it to me. I don't need another email in my inbox. And if somebody's constantly inundating you with unnecessary emails, you start to ignore the ones that are important. So that's why it's important that you really target your communication. Sorry, I've kind of rambled on there, Richard.
No, that's right. You had talked about the, getting better at it through sets and reps, but I think if somebody doesn't have good skills and then they just do sets and reps of bad skills, they just get better at bad skills. So where can somebody go to, say, learn communication best practices that they then can use sets and reps to practice the proper skills? Because I think there's a lot of people that think they're good communicators, sometimes because they over communicate, and you talked about that, the right message at the right time and the right measure to the right people. For example, one of the things that just tends to frustrate me is if somebody needs some help, and they'll send a question out to 30 people, say, hey, does anybody know the answer to this question? And somebody, not 30 people that they sent that message to, knows the answer, and they reply to all, as if the other 29 were genuinely interested in knowing what that person knows about the answer to that question, when the question was only raised by one person and the answer should only go to one person. They hit the reply to all, and maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people will hit the reply to all, and just blow up everyone's inbox on this, just that simple skill of communicate only to you whom you need to communicate to. So as that is and I just share that one because that one's a real peeve of mine, and then I often look like a butt when I'm trying to coach somebody on how not to use the reply to all when they don't need to. And I think they probably more often get angry at me than appreciate it. But so how does somebody learn like these proper communication skills? Because some would say, some people, it's like nature or nurture. Some people might be born with them, but I don't know that that's necessarily the case. You might have good mentors, you've learned from along the way, but what if you haven't? How do you learn this stuff?
Great question. I think that as leaders, whether we be the captain, the battalion chief, the assistant chief, or the chief, we're accountable to those people. And part of that accountability is honesty. So if I'm the assistant chief and my battalion chief is sending me emails that are unacceptable, but either by spelling or by, like you said, he's responding back, I'll have a hamburger, not a hot dog at the barbecue. It's like, I don't need to know that. I need to have that communication with him right away. And that falls right into the communication piece of this NIOSH 5 for leadership. If I'm your lead in leadership position, I need to communicate to you, hey, we don't do it that way. You need to ask yourself, who needs to know this? I don't need to know that you're not coming to the barbecue. Just the organizer does. Nobody wants to see all that. If it's spelling, if it's format, if it's things like that, much like I say to people that are in a subordinate position, never come with a problem, always come with a solution. You should be as a leader as well. So I should go to that captain or firefighter and say, these emails aren't formatted the way they should be. They're having some challenges with the communication piece. Here's what we're going to do. Either you're going to come work with me in the office and we're going to go through some of this stuff, or we're going to get you signed up for a program, at work, after work, whatever that looks like in your department. And you empower those people to get better. Just complaining about them, not communicating effectively is act or accept, right? So if you have a problem with what's going on there, do something about it. Also, we as leaders have to be open to constructive criticism. So if my boss comes to me and says, I wanted to talk to you about the way you put out that last training memo, I shouldn't have my backup right away. I should look at it as an opportunity. And I know it's pie in the sky. I'm not trying to say like, oh yeah, every time I get criticized, I just love it. But I got to go in there and say, okay, there's a reason the boss is taking this time out. So I should, sit down, open my ears, open my eyes, and take this in. So I think that's how we recognize it. Just being honest with each other. One of my coworkers in Abbotsford, he used to give me a hard time because I have a really big thing about punctuation and spelling and stuff. So I would send back little things to him jokingly about, correcting him on things. He needs to laugh and say, oh my gosh, you're killing me with this stuff. But whenever he'd send out an email that was important, he would come over into my office and say, hey, can you read this and get out your red pen? And so I'd go through it with him. And it wasn't I'm smarter than him, or because that's certainly not the case. It was just, we go through it together, and then I'd show him what I saw, and he's like, great, I like that, I like that. I'm going to keep this part as it is. Awesome, great. And then he took it away, and I'm sure he got a little better from seeing it, but he also recognized that, hey, this is maybe not my strongest suit. I need to run it by somebody, and that worked well for both of us. So.
Yeah, let's go on to another one here. Improper risk assessment.
Sorry.
Improper risk assessment, the second one on the list.
Yeah, so much like in the NIOSH 5, lack of 360 is a big one, right? Like just not understanding exactly what's going on before you start making decisions. When we're at the fire hall, whether it's emergency scene stuff, whether it's the big stuff like conflict resolution or change management, or it's just dealing with the day-to-days, as an officer, we really want to understand what's going on. One of the ways that we do that risk assessment is understanding our people, understanding what's their motivation, why are they here, what's their families like, what's going on in their life. And I don't mean meddling, but just being interested in who they are and what's happening with them. If I can start off with that basis with my crew, I start to understand when things start to go a little off track. If things are getting out of alignment, I can sense it, because this guy isn't usually this way. This gal's usually a lot more cooperative, or those sort of things. And I can get into problem solving sooner versus waiting for it to blow up and then going, wow, that really, that's not like that person. Well, I should have noticed that earlier. I should have been doing my size ups and 360s sooner. And credit to you, when I'm teaching this, I talk to people about being situationally aware, perceive, understand, and predict in the context of time. Thank you, Chief Gasaway. And this is constantly having your eyes open and listening to what's happening at the hall, watching what's happening at the hall. And you practice on the small stuff. If I, for example, tactically or strategically, size ups are a great thing in a fire. Everybody's supposed to do them. We all understand that. But the only time we seem to practice is when the fire is happening, in a lot of cases. What I say to guys is, when you go to a medical call, do you do a size up on the building? And most will kind of look at me like, no, not normally. Well, this is a great opportunity to do those sets and reps. It's a low pressure situation. No one even needs to know that you're doing it. When you're coming up, you're checking out the Bravo side. You catch the Alpha as you land. You do a quick look down the Delta as you go in. Try to do a little virtual map of what's going to be inside of that building. As soon as I walk in, I can confirm or correct what I thought I saw when I went in. That's a little set and rep. Then I deal with the medical call. Come back out, talk with the crew. Hey, if we have a fire here next week, what are we going to do? Did you guys see where the standpipes are? Or if it's a single family residence, what's the best approach? That kind of stuff. Sets and reps. So much like when I'm dealing with people at the hall on the interpersonal level, the HR level, it's just watching all those little things and trying to be aware instead of just coming to work, doing my thing, going home.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of work, Jeff.
Yeah, it is. Well,
if I just keep my head down, I don't pay attention on the bigger picture, then there's less problems for me to deal with, because if I don't see them, I don't have to deal with them.
Yeah, I had an uncle like that. That's why I never went to the hospital, because if I don't go there, then I'll never be sick. Well, it doesn't work that way. So in this case, whether and this doesn't have to be a captain or a battalion chief. As a firefighter, I should be doing this. I should be aware of what's going on with my crew. I should be paying attention to how the captain's vibing with the rest of the crew. Is there something going on there? That kind of stuff. I should be doing those things. As a battalion chief or assistant chief, this is one of the ones that really gets the ball gets dropped, because they get so busy. They've got all this stuff on their plate. The chief's got 3 more things they've got to do. And they don't have time in their mind. They're thinking, I just don't have time to take that time to go down and have a coffee with the crew right now. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it on Friday. I'll do it next week. It's so valuable for you to spend some boots on the ground time with the crews. That's where you're going to find out where the vibe is. You send out a new policy. You get no emails back. You think, okay, must be fine. Well, the crews could be chewing on this thing and just not liking it at all. I don't know that, because no one sent me an email, and I haven't bothered to go down and take a pulse. So I really need to get down there and do an assessment of what's happening at the hall. Doesn't have to be necessarily on something as kind of acute as we've put in a new policy, just the day-to-days. I can't tell you how many times, well, and being the training chief, it's helpful because, of course, the crews come down through training, so you see a lot of them that way as well. But can't tell you how many times I've been at the fire hall or the training ground, and something's come up just in conversation, and you go, "Well, hang on. So tell me more about that." And they'll explain it out to you. They've got an issue. It's just starting to ruminate and germinate, and you can go, "Oh, no, that's not what happened. Here's what we did. Here's what we're going to do in the future. And thank you for bringing that up, because we'll make sure that piece doesn't happen either." Just by being there and having that coffee talk with the guys, right? Taking that time, the guys and gals to get just to read a lay of the land. That's basically that improper risk assessment.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good stuff.
The other piece to this, sorry, Rich.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. The other piece to this is the self-awareness part. So I've got to be constantly looking at myself. What's going on with me? How am I feeling? How am I reacting to things that are going on in the hall or with my family? Or, as we know, PTSD is an issue as well. I've got to be reading that sort of thing as well. If I got to know what my values are, this is a big one. When we do some of the leadership stuff, one of the things we do is a values exercise. And when I start off, I say, how many people think it's important that you have established values? Everybody sticks their hand up. Well, great. How many people know what their values are? There's a few less hands that go up this time. People are kind of reading the play, looking at you like, And then the third one is, who can name them right now? And there's probably consistently 20% or less that could name their values on the spot if asked. So I say, well, how do you, your character is you acting through your values with integrity. How do you do that if you don't even know what your values are? So if you don't have a foundation, a lot of your decision making is going to be flawed just out of the gate, because you haven't established what's important to you as a priority. That's being self-aware as well.
What did you say character was? You went pretty quick there. I missed it. Acting.
So yes, acting with integrity in line with your values. So if I've established my values and now I'm honest and committed to following those values, that's where my character gets built. You often hear it's doing the right thing when no one's around. Well, yeah, but that's not enough. It's more than that. I think it's always operating off the foundation of your values. Again, not a quote that I said, but I love it, is you can't fire a cannon from a rowboat. You have to build your foundation strong or things are going to go wrong.
I'm good. Hold on a second. I'm writing that one down. Can't fire a cannon
from a rowboat. Well, you can once.
Yeah, right. Yeah, one time you can.
Yeah.
If you get the cannon into the rowboat. All right, let's move along to a lack of incident command. How does that relate?
So someone has to be in charge, basically, is what it comes down to. So when I'm in a leadership position, I have to understand that it's all on me now. That's the extreme ownership of Jocko Willing. If I'm in charge, I got to be in charge. That means, like, Wildlands, for example, has a great the 10 standing orders, and the number 6 standing order is be alert, stay calm, think clearly, and act decisively. That's pretty good advice for your whole life, I think, on a day-to-day, whether you're dealing with spousal issues or the guy at the coffee store that's creating an issue with you, or working at the fire hall. Just be alert, stay calm, think clearly, and act decisively. I really like it. And being decisive is the ability to make those decisions based on your experience, the feedback you have, the resources you have, and making them in that condensed time frame in a lot of cases for us. I know Gordon Graham talks about discretionary time and non-discretionary time, and most of our stuff is discretionary time. Most of it, we have that ability to take a second and make that decision with a measured response versus the shooting from the hip. There is times that we have to, make a call right away. But if you've got the time, take the time. Use your resources. Your most valuable resource, of course, is going to be your people. The guy who's on the job 2 minutes, the gal that just came out of recruit training, she may be a plumber. prior to getting on the job. So now when I'm at a call and things are going sideways, we got water blowing out of 3 pipes, and she's a resource. Instead of me being, I'm in command, I have to make all the decisions because I've got the bars and I'm the be all end all. That's not the case. And go to her and say, what's the best way to deal with this right now? She goes, oh, there's a shut off in the street. I could have it off in about 15 seconds. Well, she's your rock star today. You're going to use that resource. So being decisive and knowing what your resources are and being able to make decisions under pressure. That's the job. I think it was Arlie Burke said the difference between a good officer and a poor one is about 10 seconds. And it's just the ability to make those decisions when you need to make them. So.
Oh, good stuff. I'm taking lots of notes here.
But again, this wasn't for me, but I love the line. It's almost everything gets worse before it gets better. So whether we're changing policy, whether we're getting a new rig, whether we show up at a fire is a great example. It's you show up, you see what's going on. You got fire coming out of the Charlie side on the 2nd floor window. Almost always our first 2 minutes, it looks like we just made it worse. We opened the door, we got somebody on the roof, whatever that was. It gets bigger and then it gets better. So I think you have to keep that in mind, that it's, you don't have a magic wand. So when you do make your decisions, you got to tolerate the dip before it comes back up.
Sure. All right, let's move on to the next one. Lack of accountability.
Yeah. So we talked about some values, but character, integrity, discipline, commitment, that's that accountability. I have to be accountable to a number of different people as a leader. One, accountable to myself. That's being in line with my values. And like we talked about, my character is my integrity, or acting with integrity on my values. The second people that we have to be accountable to are our crews that are working for us and our team. So that's caring about them. That's keeping them their best interest in mind. That's operating with them safely. Like when I task them out, whether it's at emergency scene management or any other less severe situation, I need to keep their best interest in mind. Yes, they are a firefighter, and yes, we do a dangerous job, but we try to do it as safely as we can within the parameters of what we're trying to get done. And my first thought is them. An example, we're at a fire. It was post knockdown, lots of off-gassing going on. It was a large building. There's 3 of the guys are standing outside and they got their face pieces off. And I walked by as one of the chiefs on scene, and I said, boys, face pieces. And they look at me like, come on, chief, the fire is over. We're over here just kind of wetting stuff down. And I said, you know what, guys, if you don't care about you, that's one thing, but I do. And I have to make sure that the next step is I care about your wife and your kids. So I'm going to get you to put your face pieces on, because I'm not going to be responsible for why you're not coming home in 3 years because you've developed cancer from this thing. And now they go, okay, well, how do they argue that? Like, I'm looking after their wife and kids and I'm looking after them. It's not a rules thing. It's a I care about you thing, and I'm accountable to them. Also accountability to the chief. So this one can sometimes be a bit cantankerous, I guess. I don't know if the word's right, but we sometimes have a tough relationship with management versus the union side.
Hey, Jeff, we got a little bit choppy on the connection.
In charge of the charge. Coming from the city, coming from all the background. Nope. A little bit late.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you just got choppy a bit back. How are we doing now? I can hear you.
Do you have any internet browser windows open by chance?
No.
Close? No? Okay.
No, I've closed everything.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it kind of got glitchy there for a moment. So if you could just repeat that last lesson, and hopefully it gets better.
Sure. So you also have to be accountable to the chief. And as much as that can sometimes be a tough relationship, the fact is they are our boss. And they've got a lot of other factors when they're making decisions that we don't potentially don't know. It's our job to follow the chief and support the chief. If I've got a problem with some of the things the chief may have going on, then help out. lead up. If you can identify some of the gaps in the department's plan or the overall plan or some policy the chief's rolling out or anything, help them out. Instead of bringing the problem, bring a solution. And that, you're not as a firefighter, that's going to probably have to, you're coming up through the chain of command. But if you're a captain or a battalion chief, I'm pretty sure the chief's going to be open to you bringing solutions to his office. So you want to support the chief. Also, if you support the chief, he's more likely to support you when it comes time to a point of friction. And that could be with the city or the city manager or negotiations or anything else like that. So it's not so much self-serving. It's just, you care for me, I'll care for you. That's what we do. On the city, I'm accountable to the city as a firefighter. They hired me. This is, and I'm talking about mayor and council so much, not the community. I have to understand the vision of the city. Imagine, Chief, you've been in this role. You used to go by a phone of the fire halls to pop in for a coffee, and the guys are drilling and on the table. They got some papers out and they're talking together and training. And you say, guys, what are you working on today? And the captain says, we're just going over the city vision and policy. You'd be like, what? When have you ever seen firefighters have a look at what the city's vision is? Or maybe their 10-year plan or their 5-year plan. They don't have to do it every week and even every month, but once a year, flip that open and get everybody familiar with it again. Hey, I'm working for these guys. This is the plan they've got for the city for the next 10 years. This is what the plan is for us for the next 5 to 10 years. We should all know that, from the most junior person right up to the chief of the department. So I want to be accountable to them and support them. Tough thing to do. And I know we're really good at griping with each other, and sometimes griping outside of the fire department, is to not gripe outside the fire department. If I've got a complaint about the fire department, I should take it internal and try to fix it. Act or accept. I always say, if you're not going to do anything about it, then shut up about it. But I got to bring that back in. If I got a beef with the chief, I don't talk about it with people on the outside of the job. I keep that in family. I'm gonna try to solve the problem here. If I got a problem with the city, I don't go bellyache to everybody else about it. I try to fix it. Put that energy into something positive instead of telling your friends at a dinner party that you think the city manager is a jerk. It's just not productive. It's not professional. It's not the vision that we should be putting out as fire service members. And then finally, and most importantly, is we're accountable to the community. That means every day you come to work, you got your A game on. You're there to get it done. When it's time to train, you train. When it's time to go do inspections, you do it. You do everything to the best of your ability, because you said yes to this thing. Nobody forced you to come to the fire department, not that I'm aware of anyway. It seems like a job that lots of folks want to do. So do it. So just get on with your job and do it. And when they call you, they don't expect somebody to come in that's mailing it in today. They expect you to come in like a superhero. Like, this is your job. So get after it aggressively and do it.
I like the way you're making these connections to the NIOSH 5. I was a little curious when we were kicking this up as to how this was all gonna flow, but it's all making really clear sense to me. Obviously, you've spent a lot of time and thought about this. Let's take the last one. Lack of or failure to follow standard operating procedures or standard operating guidelines.
Yeah. So, and this for sure is a leadership thing. It's one of the things that seems to fall off the table is when we talk about SOPs, and guys roll their eyes and say, oh God, has anybody looked through the guideline book lately? Probably not. Again, if this was a thing that you pulled out once a month and you pulled out 5 SOPs, important ones that you need the crew to see, and you went over with them, it's going to make the crew better. It's going to make you better as an officer. When you decided you were going to be an officer, when you said yes to the lieutenant rank, captain rank, battalion chief rank, you said that you were going to learn those SOPs. You're going to educate yourself in them. You were going to train the troops in them, and then you're going to make them accountable for them. And if you're not doing those things, you're failing to do your job as an officer. Gordon Graham's, predictable is preventable. Bless you. Predictable is preventable. So, part of that, going through your SOPs is understanding what we can do as a base playbook to be better at our jobs. What happens if your SOPs are out of date, or they're no good, or they're just straight out unsafe? Well, we're problem solvers. that's why we got on this job, is we go to help other people solve their problems. We should be able to solve our own problems. So if we have an SOP that's not up to date, again, use your resources. I'm going to bring that SOP down to the kitchen table. I'm going to sit with the troops. I'm going to say, guys and gals, how do we make this better? Beat it up with them, rewrite it, bring it to another crew on another shift, bring it to that captain. Could you run this by with your crew, put some eyes on it, see if it makes sense to you? Once they give it the green light, pass it off to your battalion chief. He green lights it and he brings it up to the chief. Well, I can't think of too many chiefs that would be angry if you came in with 3 or 4 SOPs pre-written and loaded for him, so that all he had to do was sign off on them and stick them in the manual, or maybe make a change or two. But that's being productive and proactive as a team, instead of belly aching that that policy's been out of date for 6 years. Well, where have you been for the last 6? Do something about it. So, and if you, as an officer, you don't want to enforce policy and procedure, then hand in your bars. And if you're a firefighter that doesn't want to follow procedure and policy of the job, then hand in your uniform. There's a lot of people that want to do this job. And if you don't want to do it, get out of the way for someone who will. Policy and procedure is part of what we do. So we really need to adhere to it and reinforce.
You're here. Well, that's the 5, and that's the leadership connection of the 5. Is there anything that you would want to discuss about the NIOSH 5 and or leadership that we haven't discussed yet? Because I just didn't ask you the right question.
There is so much to talk about with leadership. I think that the questions are great. Thank you again for allowing me to come do this with you today. It's definitely been a privilege and a new experience for me to do the podcast. Especially, we were talking earlier. This is not a face for podcasts. This is barely a face for radio. So, yeah, it is what it is, I guess. I think that this can go so much further. There's so much more conversation around leadership and how we get better at it. I think that we have to keep in mind leadership starts from the day you get on the job. You don't have to wait till you get bars to start being a leader. And we see it all the time. That young person that's out doing drills at 9 o'clock at night, that's leadership. That's leadership. That person that comes in with a great idea to the captain, who brings it up to the chief, and it becomes part of how we do business in the fire department. That's leadership. And the obvious leadership of captains and battalion chiefs of looking after people every day, doing a great job, showing up and serving the community like you said you would. It's not about just having a t-shirt. It's it's the commitment to this job and to the team. So I think that it's I could go on a long time about leadership stuff, and if you've been in any of my leadership classes, I'm sure they would agree. Oh, he can go on.
If somebody wanted to reach you, how could they follow up with you?
They could go check out my website at practicalandtactical.net, and I've got links there to get a hold of me, and yeah, I'm happy to help anybody out with anything I can, and even if it's just for a conversation or some of the stuff we talked about today. If someone says, well, that's great, but how do you actually do that? Yeah, give me a call. I'm sure there's some explanations I could have done better. I'd be happy to do it with anybody at any time.
Okay, fantastic. Jeff, thanks for being with us today. We're right on the mark of about 1 hour. So
right on.
Yeah, it's I'm always amazed when I look at the clock and I say, where did this time go? Because it's so interesting to have that to learn so much from the guests that are on, and the connection you've made between the NIOSH 5 and the leadership lessons were right on spot. And I think it's going to be a fantastic episode. So thank you for being with me today.
Well, thank you. Privilege and a pleasure. And I've listened to a ton of your stuff coming up through the fire service, and it's definitely made me a better firefighter. On this actual NIOSH 5 and leadership, I've got an article into fire engineering that's supposed to be coming out in the new year at some point. So if people are interested, keep an eye for that, and talks a little bit more about what we talked about today.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you to Jeff Snider for sharing some of your wisdom about the NIOSH 5 and the associated leadership lessons. Now, you've probably heard me say this a time or two in the last few episodes, but you're going to hear it again. if you've been following along for a while, you know that I took 6 months off in 2023 to kind of rest up and to just kind of get off the road for a little while. Now, for 14 years before the pandemic, I had pretty consistently delivered between 90 and 120 live programs per year. So if you take that and you add in the all the travel, you get the idea that I was on the road quite a bit, and quite a bit it was. So taking some time off helped to recharge my batteries and helped to remind me of just how passionate I am about the topic of situational awareness. Now, the time off also provided opportunities and space for our certified master instructors to also step up and deliver programs. But now I'm on the road again, I'm rested up, and I'm ready to go. So if you want to know where we're going to be upcoming, here's what the schedule looks like. So far, it's always changing, so feel free to check the website and see if something's been added or something's been changed. But starting tomorrow, January 22 to February 2, actually, it's not going to be me. It's going to be certified master instructor Drew Moldenauer is going to be at the Syncrude refinery in Fort McMurray, Alberta. And at the conclusion of this visit, we will have delivered 71 programs for Syncrude as part of their periods of high vulnerability training program, where we help process operators with the skills to help them have better situational awareness and to improve their high risk decision making. Then, at the conclusion of working with Syncrude, Drew is going to go down to Suncor Edmonton refinery. And February 5 through 9, he'll be at Edmonton, Suncor Edmonton. Now, Suncor is the parent company for Syncrude. So since Syncrude had experienced, in their words, a fundamental change in their organizational culture as a result of our training, the program kind of got the eye of the folks at Suncor. And so we're going to be rolling this program out to their other refineries as well. And this will be our third, well, Drew's third visit to Suncor Edmonton. February 10, I will be delivering a program for the Canada Task Force 2 group in Calgary, Alberta. And this will be my first time presenting to Task Force 2, so I'm really looking forward to that. February 29, I will be in Orlando, Florida, delivering a program for the Center for Public Safety Excellence Conference. This will be the 8th time I've had the opportunity to present for the CPSE Excellence Conference in Orlando. So I'm really excited for the chance to be back, and thank you for your faith in my mission. March 1 and 2, I'll be at the Spotsylvania Volunteer Fire Department in Spotsylvania, Virginia. And this will be the second program that I've delivered for the Spotsylvania Volunteer Fire Department. The first one was a virtual program during the pandemic. So this will be my first time live with the folks there. So I'm really looking forward to that. March 4 and 5, I will be at the Maryland Fire and Rescue Institute, or the University of Maryland's National Fire Service Staff and Command Program in Annapolis, Maryland. This will be my 22nd year presenting for the National Fire Service Staff and Command Program. So thank you, Mifri, for 22 years of opportunities. I really appreciate that. April 19 and 20, I'll be at the Taos County Fire Department in Red River, New Mexico. And I'm especially excited for this program because I've never presented in New Mexico. It's the only state I've not presented in. So next April, that all changes, and I will be able to click off all 50 states. And our master instructors are working hard to add their programs as well. Collectively, in the last quarter of 23, they delivered more than 30 programs. So you can check out the list of all of our upcoming events at the SA Matters website. Now, I also want to take a moment to thank the hosts of some recent programs and consultations that we did. On November 27 to December 1, Drew Moldenauer, my master instructor, one of them, and I were at the Suncor Edmonton refinery in Edmonton, Alberta, training process operators on situational awareness and high-risk decision-making. And as I said already, Drew will be back there in February. On December 9, I delivered a program for the Maryland Fire Chiefs Association in Ocean City, Maryland. That was the 4th program I've had the opportunity to deliver for the Maryland Fire Chiefs Association. And man, what a fantastic event it was. A great turnout. We had a full room. Can't always say that, but here we did. Holy cow, was it Very, very well attended. And I wondered, right before the holidays how it was going to turn out, but it turned out fantastic. And then I took some time off for the holiday season, and I'll be back on the road after the holidays. And if you're interested in hosting a live event or a virtual program, just click on the Contact Us tab at the top of the SA Matters homepage, and I'll give you a call. Finally, remember to check the show notes for how to subscribe to our newsletter and how to follow us on social media. There we share ideas about how to improve situation awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters Show with Dr. Richard Gasaway. If you're interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit his website, samatters.com. If you're interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for a program, or if you would like to be a guest on his show, click the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage.
Well, that's it. Episode 303 of the Situational Awareness Matters Show is complete. Thank you again to my guest, Jeff Snider, for sharing your knowledge about the NIOSH 5, the most 5 cited contributing factors, the line of duty deaths, and then associating that to lessons for leaders. Thank you to our viewers and listeners for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.